and Hanukkah, and especially tonight, Kol Hashvin Chavivin. We lit the seventh candle. Whenever there is a Chavivus, it stands out and brings us an extra bracha. Just like the Rebbe brings in the Maimon Basilikani, because we are Shvin, we deserve the Geula. So let's hope that the Inyan Kol Hashvin Chavivim from tonight should hurry up the Geula, take Miyad Mamash. In the last seconds of Golus that we are, it should be L'chol B'nei Yisrael Ha'ya'ir B'mishvaisam, just like in Mitzrayim, that everyone should have Oir and Simcha, V'sasain, Vikar, all the brachas, especially those who need the Refuah Shlema, should have Takev Miyad Mamash. As usual, this Shiur, the Shiurim, are L'schus Miriam Bas, Ephraim Ze'ev, should have Aliyas HaNashama. And the biggest Aliyas HaNashama is Yeridas HaNashama Lamata, Tchias HaMeisim B'Karv Mamash. We started a Maimer with the pasuk of Baruch Sha'asa Nissim, La'aviseinu, Bayom HaMahim B'Zman Hazeh. The Eibishter, we're thanking the Eibishter who made miracles, La'aviseinu, Bayom HaMahim B'Zman Hazeh, at this time of the year. The Rebbe adds, B'Zman Hazeh means also that he should make miracles happen now. Just like by Yom HaMahim he made miracles, he should now also make miracles B'Zman Hazeh. The Rebbe quotes, the Rebbe Rashab is quoting the words Shas and Nissim. Nissim is Loshen Rabim, and there are two ways you can teach it. Either he's doing a lot of Nissim, which are L'mayla min HaTeva, or he's doing Nissim, which are Melubash in Teva. Says the Rebbe, the Kavana, when he says Nissim here, he's talking about both. A Nes, which is L'mayla min HaTeva, like in Hanukkah, and a Nes, which is Al Pi Teva, like the Nes of Purim. It was a Nes, but it was in Darkei HaTeva. And the Rebbe is going to start explaining the Inyan of Nissim B'chlal. But before he starts explaining what are Nissim, we have to understand what's Teva. Because Nissim are L'mayla min HaTeva. So what if, once we establish what's Teva, we can establish what are Nissim. Basically, Teva is Seder Ishtalshalos. Nes is L'mayla min Seder Ishtalshalos. So if we have to establish what's Teva, let's figure out what's Ishtalshalos. So the word Ishtalshalos, like we explained last time, is from the word Shalshelas, like a chain. What's the union of a chain? One link is connected to the next one. And it just goes lower and lower, link by link. But they're all connected, like a chain reaction. That's the union of Ishtalshalos. In order to understand the build, the structure of Ishtalshalos, the Rebbe brings what's brought in Seif Yetzirah, that the world is built on Ashan, Olam Shana Nefesh. What's Olam Shana Nefesh? Olam is space, Shana is time, and Nefesh is the Chayos that Hashem puts into the world, into every person. As we see here in the Kitzurim, that That's the union of Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. And last time we started about Olam and saying Olam is every kind of Metzius. Those are Kalim for the Oyer, for the Shefel Laki. Every Kali is something which has space. It takes a space. It takes a Mugain. That's Olam. Then the next step should be Shana. But the Rebbe doesn't talk about Shana until later in the Maimer. He goes straight to the third thing, which is Nefesh. And that's where we are up to. 3, 4, 5, 7 lines from the top. The last word on the line, the word Nefesh. The word Nefesh and the last word of the line. What is Nefesh? Usually when you say Nefesh Adam, Nefesh HaBehema, when you talk about Nefesh, it means the energy force, the life of this person. Over here, when the Rebbe goes over from Olam to Nefesh, he says, Nefesh hu achayis eliki shebechol nivra. Every single nivra, everything that was created, whether it's a human being, whether it's animal life, plant life, or the inanimate, anything, a grain of sand, like the Alter Rebbe writes in Shara Yichud Ve'emunah, everything needs a chayes eliki. So he says, Nefesh, if you're subdividing the world into 3 parts, and saying the world has Olam, Shana, Nefesh, Nefesh hu achayes eliki shebechol nivra. And it's this Nefesh, shemechayo mehava oisoi me'ayin va'efes liyesh. Sheyiyeh b'dechinas metzias davar machlu. In order that it should be a metzias, it needs to have a chayes eliki. In order to understand this better, that everything in the world has chayes, the Rebbe brings a dogma from a human being. A human being here, lamata, also has these 2 levels of olam and nefesh. Olam is his guf, nefesh is the chayes that Hashem puts into his guf to keep him alive. Olam nikra guf bichlalusai. By a person, what's his gather of olam? That's the guf in general. Ve'varei haguf shem keli loira nefesh nikra mokaim. The ivarim, the limbs of the body, that means not just the body in general, but the details of the body. Those are kalim, and this is called mokaim. Because we said just before, olam is mokaim, synonymous with mokaim. That's why in general, a person is called olam katan, a small world. When is he called a small world? So here you have parentheses. In the Hakdam of the Maimah, in the front page, it says that this is a Maimer that the Frierdiker Rebbe transcribed from his father, the Rebbe Rashab. We know by the Rebbe's Verbringens, there were those who wrote a Hanacha. They would transcribed it. Who transcribed this Maimer? The Frierdiker Rebbe. And he added some of his own notes in parentheses, like right here where we're up to. And Aleph Hey stands for Amar HaKosev. The writer, the transcriber of this Maimer is saying as follows. L'ha'ir Adam Davka I just want to mention that throughout the Maimer, we're going to find a lot of these inserts where it says Aleph Hey, which means Amara Koisev. The transcriber is saying this, and the Friedgeber writes what appears to be in shorthand. What do I mean in shorthand? He's just writing pointers. He's not writing a hezber, ba'arichus, of what the Rebbe Rashab is saying. He's just adding a comment here, a comment there, and sometimes a few comments, but all very concise, very short. So here the Rebbe wants to say, when we say Klolas HaAdam is called Olam Katan, it says, what is the definition of Adam here? Lahair Adam Dafka. What's Adam? Adam means a composition comprised of two parts. Meira al Yichud Gufa Nefesh. Why Gufa Nefesh? Maybe Olam a person is called Olam Katan just because of his guf. Says no. Or just because of his nefesh. Says the zeh beloy zeh nikra basar ay nefesh chulu. If talking about just the body, that's the basar, besar ha'adam. Talking about the nefesh, that's only nefesh ha'adam. When does a person get the description adam? When he has basar and nefesh together. That's what the Rebbe is adding. And when it says Olam Katan, say Ha'adam, talking about Ha'adam, which is composed of Guf and Nefesh. So we see that there is a Guf, which is called the Olam, the Mugain, Uba Olam. And in this Guf, which is called Olam, Hazeh, and this very Olam, had a mislabish by Nefesh and Mechayosai. So we know that he has a nefesh that gives it life. It sustains it with energy, that it should be alive. It sustains it with life. Otherwise, how can it live? What the Rebbe is bringing here, he wants to bring a dogma of a person that also has chayas, and bring a nimshal that the olam also, there is the keli and there's the oyer. There's the actual world, whether it's Atzilos, Bri, Atzira, Asiya, and then there is the oir that Hashem emanates to each world. So he's saying, Mislabish by Nefesh and Mechayoisai. And even though we have no clue, what is this nefesh? That's mechaya my guf. What my guf is, I can feel it, I can see it, I can touch it. But the nefesh that's mechaya my guf, we have no clue. What's mehus hanefesh? No. And when he's saying mehus hanefesh, he wants to clarify. The lav dafka mehus hanefesh batzmusa. I'm not talking about the nefesh. Mahus HaNefesh, the very essence of the nefesh, the way it's in its etzem. Ela filo hachayis klali me hanefesh gamkin. Even the chayis klali that comes from the etzem hanefesh, and it comes down into my body, ein ono yodim oisai. We don't know it. We know it exists. But we don't know it face to face. Don't make paper, turn the pages. We don't know it face to face. In other words, we don't know what is a nefesh. We know it exists. And then comes a parenthesis from the Friedrich Rebbe, Amar HaKoisev. He's telling you to look. Ayim b'divir HaMaschil, v'asisa Chag HaShavuos, the year Tafresh Nun Vav. And he explains from when you talk about the ha'ara klalis that comes from the nefesh to the body, you can look in that maimer about it. Gives you another maimer over Divrei HaMaschil, Avram Zaken, B'Divrei HaMaschil Ani Hashem Leishanisi, Mishnas Mem Zayin. So he's giving you 3 Maramekaimas where you can look for more detail. B'Tzarei Flakan, and you can combine those Maimarim to over here, V'Tavim, and then you will understand this Maimar. So basically what he's saying, we don't understand, we don't know what is this nefesh. We don't really get it. We just know it exists. Why can't we know what it is? We know about it. You know what it exists. The etzem nefesh itself is higher from being in the level of yediyah. What is yediyah? Yediyah means knowledge, knowing. The yediyah in Yonei Asaga, I grasp it. B'chol Asaga hu rak b'metzias hadavar, v'lo b'mehusa inyan mamash. Anytime you have a yediyah of something, you know the metzias of the thing, but you don't know the thing itself mamash. The thing itself, you don't know what it is. I'll give you an example. There's a Maimer of Hanukkah where the Rebbe speaks about one of the things from the Yavanim is Lashkichem Teresechol, Avira Mechukah Ritzinecha. What does it mean, Chukah Ritzinecha? That the mitzvahs, even those of Eidos and Mishpatim that we do understand, they're still chukim. What is a chayk? Chayk is something we don't understand. We have no understanding why. The meat is kosher. The milk is 100% kosher. You can have them separate times. Put it together, it's treif. It's basa b'chalav. It's a chayk. Okay, we're going to give you explanation. Explain it azay and azay. Says the Rebbe that really, ultimately, no mitzvah can we really understand. Because even those places where there is an explanation for a mitzvah, it's only on klolos ha-mitzvah, not in the pratim, not in the details. We don't really understand taimei ha-mitzvahs even when it comes to detail. We just know b'chlolos. What the Rebbe is saying here, what's yediyah? Yediyah means hahasaga, grasping an inyan. And all you can have is not more than yediyas hametzius. You know, this is what it is. But mehusa inyan mamash, that's impossible. And the Frierdiker Rebbe in a parentheses now wants to explain that a little bit. Says a person has 2 ways to grasp something, either with chachma or with bina. What's the difference between chachma and bina? Chachma is barak hamavrik. It's more abstract. It's not yet pulled down and digested by the brain. It's just like the flash. It's like someone's trying to explain you something, and then suddenly you say to him, I see what you're saying. You see it? Why, it's in the room? What does it mean, I see it? Chachma is re'iyah. Bina is not re'iyah. Bina is havana. That's what he's saying. Amalakaisev, laha'ir, bina, oirich v'reichev, like metzius. When you understand something with your bina, you're taking it down in oirich v'reichev. Then you're understanding, but you're getting a grasp of the metzius hadavar, the existence of the thing. But chachma, the iyas hamos. Chachma is the iyah mos. You're on a higher level. Not everyone can reach that. We'll soon bring a dogma from the Arizal. The iyah type is gashmi. Because the iyah is such a high level, that's why you can see a davar gashmi. Shmiya, can you hear the shmiya affect the davar gashmi? It's sound waves. If you're going to compare Riyah to Shmiya, everyone knows Riyah is something you see Gashmias. Shmiya, you can only hear a Koyal Ruchni. Shmiya is Bina, a lower level. So if Shmiya is the level of Bina, how come it only can grasp Ruchnias? So the Rebbe explains in another Maimer that because Riyah has a higher Shadish in Nefesh from Chachma, that's why you can go lower and reach into Gashmias. That's where your eyes can see Gashmias, but your ears, which are only Bina, can only grasp Ruchnias. Again, this is only in short. We're not going into the details. Ma Shenkin Bechinas Chachma. Shi Madregas Re'iyah. Chachma is a level of Re'iyah. Shu b'derech klal b'madrega shalamayla min hasechel. When you're saying Re'iyah, you're talking about the level of Chachma. Everyone knows that Chachma is higher than Sechel. If Chachma would have been total grasping, I wouldn't need Bina. So Chachma is higher than Sechel, than the regular understanding. Sham yuchal liyas gili hamahus. In the level of Chachma, you can have gilui hamahus. Mamish get to see the etzem. Now the Rebbes can bring a raya. Is my voice heard?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, because I don't see the page.
I'll reshare it.
Okay. The Harayam. The Rebbe is going to bring an example of someone who did experience Chachma and therefore had Re'iyah. He had the level of Re'iyah, not just Shmiya. Harayam. Shaladeneinu Harizal Isa. Regarding the Arizal, it's written, Gilui Neshama. He did have Gilui of the Mahus of his Neshama. Not like us, we only have Yediyah. He had Mamish Yediyah of the Metzios. He Mamish had Gilui HaMahus. V'alav Ne'amar in Yere'iyah. Regarding the Arizal, it said he was able to learn in a way of Re'iyah, like it's brought in L'Kutei Torah and other places of Chasidus. Shara, he saw, he was learning in a way of seeing. Bepashas Baruch, Bepashas Baruch uBilam. He saw Soidos HaTorah in Parshas Baruch and Bilam. When was this? It's brought that on Shabbos afternoon, he slept for about 2-3 hours, and he was able to learn in Yeshiva Shalamayla such a limud in a way of Re'iyah, a level of Chachma. And Alter Rebbe explains that Arizal, when he woke up, they said, we saw you moving your lips. You were learning. He says, what I saw there in 2-3 hours can take me 60 or 80 years to tell it over to you. And the Rebbe asked the question, why 60 or 80 years? Let's say he saw just the general points. It shouldn't take 60 or 80 years to be to repeat it. If that's all he learned, just were points. But what was the pshat? Says the Rebbe, the Arizal was then experiencing limud in a way of re'iyah. And because it's re'iyah, it's a totally different kind of learning, a level of chachma. And that's why you can have to take 60 or 80 years to repeat it, to tell it over. And that's the level of learning only that we know that Arizal had. The word the Rebbe brings in another mimer were other Yechidei Skola, but that's not the general public. Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, Ebrano ve'er es ha'aretz. Moshe was begging ve'er es ha'aretz to see the land. What he just wanted, he likes sightseeing. He had to see Eretz Yisrael. So Chassidus explains, Eretz goes on Malchus. Eretz goes on Bnei Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to be Mamshich ve'eretz ha'aretz. He wanted to bring the level of Re'iyah to the Yidden. But he was not Matzliach then. That's why it ended up Va'ata Yisrael Shema. Listen, he let only the level of Shmiya. Al Kol Panim, we see that by the Arizal was a level of Re'iyah. V'yoven mizeh. The Rebbe finishes, from this we understand, She're'iyah shaykh l'gila mahus. That's a level of Re'iyah. Amar HaKosev, v'zeu she'ayin tevis begashmi. And that's why the eye can grasp Gashmias, because it comes from a level, a much higher level of Chachma. We're talking about Gilei Amahus, that's much higher than what your Seichel can comprehend and absorb. Because at that high level, Shasham, Yachaliyos Re'iyah, the Mahus Ve'atzmi Sadavar. If you reach that level of Chachma, like the Arizal, you can reach such a high thing. Avol b'seichel, but how much can a person grasp if he's only using a seichel that's bina, ura gilei hametzius, not gilei hamahus, but gilei hametzius. Umikol malkaim, nevertheless, even though he's saying it's only gilei hametzius, hagam shezeh rak yedias hametzius, mikol malkaim. Ano yoidim b'lishim safek klal, sheyesh nefesh mechayas aguf. This is all to point out that a person's body, when it's alive, there is a nefesh, which is mechaya the guf. We're talking about olam shana nefesh. So olam is the body, and nefesh is the chayas, which is mechaya's guf. That we know only of its metzius. We don't know of its mahus. That's why you went into this thing of the Arizal. And this is so clear to us, even though we can't see the mahus of the chayas that goes into our body, but that is the metzius. That's how things are. The best proof that the body has chayas, that when the chayas goes out, chas v'shalom, when a person passes away, then everything is gone. This is a very strong proof that our body has a nefesh, which is mechaya the guf. There is a body, and there is a nefesh, it's mechaya the guf. Because when the neshama leaves, when the nefesh leaves, like we said before, everything is gone. This shinui that happens when the nefesh leaves testifies that there was a nefesh before. So what do we get from here? The nakuda that we get from the whole point here, right, that Rebbe is bringing, I want to say just like that in a person has a nefesh and a guf, so too the world has olam and nefesh. The olam is the keli that receives the chayas, and then there's the nefesh, the chayas itself. And to bring a raya, that brings from our own guf, that we have a guf and we have a nefesh. Now let's get back to where we started. The Rebbe says that just like a person's body has a nefesh, so too the olam has a guf. So let's continue with the body and the nefesh, and the Rebbe is going to tell us about ishtal shalus. The whole thing was based because the Rebbe wants to establish what is ishtal shalus, what is olam. Then we'll understand what's a nes, which is l'mayla min ishtal shalus. So to bring that, he brings from our body. So he's going to show how in our body we also have ishtal shalus. Where do you find it in our body? He says, there is the essential part of our chayas that gives chayas to every part of our body equally. It gives life. We're not talking about individual limbs of the body with different chushim and koiches. Amnam, the ha'aris hanefesh. But once the nefesh gives off its shine, when it comes down to enliven the guf in its particularities, in its details, here there are different levels. In other words, ishtalshalus. And he starts off with the head, and then with the limbs and with the feet. He's going to go through ishtalshalus haguf, all to be a mashal for the olamis. Kamay bereish. What do we have by the reish, by the head? Meidim koiches nailim yoser. The highest part of a person's ishtalshalus is his head, because that's where the most highest level of koiches are shining. But the senses that a person has, which are such a high level, seeing, the koich of sight, shmiya, of hearing, reach, smelling, tam, taste, chulu, hakoil b'rosh dafka. Can you taste a delicious apple with your fingers? It's chushin that we have in our head that enable us to experience these koiches hanaylim. Bifrat, especially if we come and talk about Gilui HaSeichel, Bitlas Mechen Chabad, the three parts of our brain, Chachma, Bina, Das. Where is that? Hakelu b'meich shebereish. Okay? So he is establishing that in the shtalshlus of a ben adam, of a person, the highest level is in the head. The highest part is in the head. And in the head, it's divided up into Chachma, Bina, Das, different Chushim. And it's going to tell us what's Chachma, Bina, and Das in the head. That means in the head itself, there is a shtalshalus. There are levels. Chachma, Ikerin Yanahu, Lahaskelas Kolis. The main thing of Chachma is to generate new seichel, new intellects. Not so much the understanding of it, but to generate new stuff. Chidushim. These new ideas, the intellectual things that he's picking up, are all bekitzur and in a way of nekuda. Point. That's chachma. That's why chachma is resembled by the yud of Shem Havaya. Then comes bina. Ubina madregasehu Lefaret hapratim davka. Let's open up the package and try to take it apart. I got the idea. Like, let's say a person is trying to figure out a certain inyan. Yes, inyan and seichel, or a practical thing, and he's thinking and thinking, and I got it. What did you get? Well, I have to digest it. I got the idea, but I have to digest it. It has to be lefaret hapratim davka. Shebechol haskala shehiskel mitzad bechinas hachachma, any kind of haskala that he generated with his chachma, hariyabina mevayer hapratim haskala zu. Bina has the kayach to take it apart and show you the pratim. A dogma for this is what's brought in Chassidus, in Pedic Beis of Tanya. The tipa that comes from the Av, from the father, is a tipa. Where does it get developed into detail, into an embryo and into a baby? By Bina, by the mother. That's the difference of Chachma and Bina. So now that we know what's Chachma and what's Bina, Chachma is just an akuda and still higher than comprehension. Bina is already comprehension. Now he's going to tell us then what's Das. If Bina is already comprehension, what do I need Das? Das means actualizing it, or would say bringing it into the person's recognition as something that's real, not just an intellectual concept, not just a logical thing, but he lives it. He feels it in his bones. But das, who is kashrus, das, like the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya Meloshin, ba'adam yodas chava, is kashrus. You get attached. Perush shemiskasher be'etzem ha'inyan. He gets attached to the very essence of the inyan, shehiskil, which he generated with his chachma. V'shehifrit, he brought into pratim with his bina. B'tztarfem yachad, then he has both together, chachma and bina. Das comes livchain oisam, to study them, to investigate them, to figure them out. L'tzayer b'moichai etzem ha'askala shehiskil, to try to create a tziyur, to imagine in your mind the very haskala that you generated, to see im amitasi. Is this really true? Is this just an imagination? Or this is correct? This is totally real. In other words, shechevtzai ideas kasha zu lahargish b'moichai inyan haskala hazuchlu, to feel it in his moyach. That's what das is all about. Das is not just another level of understanding. It's like internalizing it. It becomes for real. Where does this all take place? All of this takes place in the moyach sheberosh, the highest part of a person's ishtalshlus. Later, the Rebbe is going to bring, it's also brought in Perek Gimel of Tanya, the Seifai, that if a person has Chachma and Bina and he doesn't have Das, so even if he may get Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, and he thinks he's Mis'oirer, he says it could be just having phony imaginations. When is it real? When it's brought to a level of Das. Das makes things for real. For example, if a person studies about something, and then he sees it, or he experiences it, then he's convinced. Then it goes into his bones. He feels with every cell of his body. That's Das. So we see that the Rebbe brought Negei Chushim, Koiches, Moichin, 3 examples of the top of the Ishtalshalos of a person. That's in the head. Now let's go down to the floor under that. What's under that? In the body, there's no seichel, there's no chachma bina das, there are no chushim there. All of these elevated koiches are in the head, but in the guf, there's only midos. Midos is a person can feel fear or love in his heart. It can come down to the body. Inyan midos. Shaklalusa murak elazulas tafka. Generally speaking, seichel is something that a person uses for himself. I want to understand the Gemara. I want to understand the Maimon Chassidus. So you use your brain. That's seichel is for yourself, for your own comprehension and for your own benefit. Midos, what's chesed for? To do myself a favor? What's gevura? To be afraid of myself? No. Midas are for the Zulus, to help someone else. That's why Avraham Avinu was sitting by his tent, waiting for people to pass by so that he can feed them. Why? You're a Baal Chesed, do Chesed at home. But that's how a Chesed is. Chesed is Hashpah el Zulus. The Inyan Amidus Kamei Chesed, Draya Yemina, Ukvura Draya Smala. Where's Midas? That's the lower, next level of Ishtalshalos of a person's body. Chesed is the right arm, Gvura is the left arm. Im she'ein ikar inyanim haseichel. Even though you'll say, is there any seichel at all in the arms? No. But still the Rebbe says, a person can draw down from his seichel of his head, he could draw down seichel into his hands. Where? Kol Mugain mislabisham ha'aras ha'seichel. Underline the word ha'aras, which means a shine of the seichel. A reflection of seichel can enter your arms. When? If you want to write a letter, you want to write a few words. What are you going to write? Mishka Babel? You're going to make a scribble. You want to write something al pi seichel. So your seichel is dictating your hand what to write. So that means the seichel is being malbish, a ha'ara of itself into the hand. Sharikoisev ha-seichel al-yidei hayad. He's writing a seichel with his hand. Now you're going to say the hand suddenly turned into a keli for seichel? Impossible. Only a brain is a keli for the seichel of the nefesh. So if the hand is not a keli for seichel, how can my fingers move the pen in a seichelic way? That means my fingers, or my arm, or my hand, are becoming a keli for the seichel. What's a pshat? So the Rebbe explained. Shayad eino keli mama shel haseichel hahu. The hand doesn't become a keli. K'may sheberosh. Sheberosh hu k'may slab shesayid bekeli. When the seichel of the nefesh enters the brain in the head, there it's in a normal way of erd bekeli. Why? Hashem designed the head, the brain, to be a keli for seichel. Mashenkin hayad ain't a keli klal. It's not a keli. Ki im b'derech ha'ara u'mayver belvad mislabish be'aseichel. It does enter the hand, but totally not in a way like the seichel hanefesh enters the brain, or rather just very, very superficially. It enters the hand, yes. There is ha'aras ha'seichel, but not more than ha'aras ha'seichel. Nevertheless, the Rebbe finishes, Kol Mugain, behechrech loymar sheyesh eze shaychas ha'seichel mayad. You must say that there is some shaychas between the person's seichel and the seichel that's in the yad, because that's where the seichel came from. The seichel went from the brain into the hand to make it right in a certain way. So it must be that there is some shaychus. Sharei al yodoi mizgalacholu. How did the seichel, let's say I had a seichel, I want to write it down on a paper. So I'm being megala my seichel onto a piece of paper. How did it become this gala onto this piece of paper? Because it went through my hand, my fingers. Maivir, in Tanya, in the Geras HaKodesh, it brings a lashon like this. Maivir, this is not mamish lashon, one word after another, but this is the teichen. Maivir anikre gam ke mislapshus. You know what maivir is? There's maivir and islapshus. I'll give a mashal. You're in the subway, you got onto the express train, and it passes certain stations. And then it stops when it comes to the express station. Are you going to tell me the train did not pass by those local stations? It passed, but maivir. When it comes to an express station, there it's mislabish. That means it stops, you get off, you get on. The seichel that comes into the hand goes in a way of maivir. It's like just passing through the hand, but it's not. It is mislabish and it's not. It's mislabish in a way to be able to make me write this particular subject. But it's more maivir, which it's maivir, but it's all mislabish in a very superficial way. On the other hand, what kind of islapshus is it? Manavshich. Is it not islapshus? How does it get into the hand? So the Rebbe is going to say it's somewhere in between. It's maivir in a way of islapshus. It is entering the hand. Because we have another kind of example of something which is mislabish, which is totally not no hislapshus at all. When a person is wearing his clothing, can you compare the clothing to his arm in regards to having seichel enter it? The seichel that enters my arm is real seichel. It's only a ha'ara, it's very little, but it enters my arm to some extent. Does my seichel enter my sweater, my shirt? Shal yodam, through the person's clothing, hari'ein shum isgalas koach ma'nefesh. There's nothing. Shari'ein nifrodim me'aguf, ve'enim shayachim ala adam. They're totally separated from the body and not connected to the person. V'adam eino shaykh aleim chulu. You can't say this person has a shaykhis to his clothing. V'afeinam afilu b'derech maiver gam kein. Even b'derech maiver, they're also not. in my arm, in my hand, my fingers. So the seichel does come, at least in a way of maiver, havara, very superficial. It enters, does its job, and goes back. Clothing, no shaykhs to the etzem of the person. And here the Rebbe brings a total opposite way of looking at it. And writes in parentheses, the Efshe kemendos ye rufen maiver. What is the Rebbe saying here? He's telling us that with clothing, it's not even maiver. And he says, and perhaps we could say it's maiver. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, in the next parentheses, is explaining. Omer HaKosev, L'hoyer me'inyin alavushim shepoyelim u'moishchem es ha'etzem mamash. Levushim can definitely have a very, very strong influence and effect on the etzem mamash. Before we said, well, what shaykhs does levushim hachitzonim have with a person? Or the main shaykh aleim. Now we say you should know. On the other side of the coin, it's mamash moishech etzem mamash k'meshe kosuv k'mavuar v'divrei hamaschal la'av inyan haShabbos for the Shchaydesh the Shnas Tafish Samach Aleph v'divrei hamaschal v'hishka Samach the year Samach Gimel. What does it ever mean to say here? So I'm going to suggest something, what I think. I'll start off with a vart and a maisa. There's a vart from Reb Naftali Ropshitzer. It says, how is it that Yaakov Avinu went to his father and deceived him? Well, after all the excuses that Rashi gives and says, Anochi, Misha Anochi, Esav, Becheirecha. After all of that cleanup, Saf kol Saf, Yaakov, Ish Tam. What is Ish Tam Tmimos? How does a person who's a Tam do such a thing to his father? It's still sheker. How do we explain it? Reb Naftali Ropshitzer hat gesagt, and this is very important for us to remember. Yaakov Avinu was there then wearing big day Esav Hachamudes. He was wearing Esav's clothes as Pshuti Shel Mikra tells us. When one dresses up with Esav's begadim, it can have an influence on his behavior, his character, malach hanefesh, and everything else. Like the Rebbe says here, levushim have an effect on etzem hanefesh. We can think, like the Rebbe said a line ago, what shaykhs does the Adam have to his levushim achitzainim? Says Rabbi, I'm totally Rapshit said. You know how Yaakov said let's say, white lie? Because he was wearing big day Esav. Teaches us how careful one has to be with what you wear. That's a vart. Now I have a maisa. Was a chassid who came to the Tzemach Tzedek. He was a businessman. And he came into Yechidus. It wasn't his first Yechidus, and not his second Yechidus. And we know Yechidus is your Moledes. You go the first time, that is like you're born then. The Rebbe gets to know you. Kol panim, came into Yechidus once, and the Rebbe starts asking him about his ID. Who are you? What's your name? And started to question him, and not in a jokey way, in a very serious way. Like, where do I know you from? And after the person identified himself, Tzemach Tzedek says, aha, that's what a change in begadim, in clothing, can do to change the person's mehus. What was the story? This guy changed the style of the buttons on his jacket. There was a new style in the modern world then, and he changed it, whether it was the union of that instead of right on left, left on right, or some other thing, something to do with the buttons. He didn't change the jacket, but the style of the buttons. It changed him such a mahus that the Rebbe couldn't recognize him. It teaches us how much chitzonius has an effect. And we can't fool the Rebbe. There was someone who once came to the Rebbe in Yechidus, and he asked for a tikkun. And the Rebbe gave him a tikkun for something he did wrong. For a millisecond, a thought flashed through his mind that probably the Rebbe does not know who I am. Because for my stature, for my status, I would think the Rebbe would give me a different kind of tikkun. So probably, maybe the Gabbai mixed up the names on the list, and the Rebbe thinks I'm someone else. And that's why the Rebbe gave me this tikkun. It took him less than a millisecond to think that. And the Rebbe looked at him and said, wie viel du kennst sich, kenn ich dir noch besser. As much as you know yourself, I know you much better. The Rebbe knows everything. The Rebbe sees everything. And the Rebbe sees us with a good eye. And the Rebbe sees us with a way that he sees our nefesh. He sees the good part of us. The Rebbe doesn't see anything negative. There was once another Maisa, a chassid, that came into Yechidus, and he was dressed like a modern businessman. And the Rebbe looks at him. He always went the way they went dressed in Lubavitch. You know, and suddenly this guy is dressed with such a modern, colorful suit for a businessman who go to Petersburg or whatever. So Rebbe looked at him. So he says, I'll be honest with you, that I do business in Petersburg. And over there, I changed my clothes. I put on a suit that fits Petersburg. I come back to Lubavitch, I dress up like in Lubavitch. But after doing this many times, I thought that I'm being a hypocrite. I'm not being emistic. If you're a Chassidish Yid, geh Chassidish Yid. Go like that. If you're a businessman, so be emistic. So I decided to be emistic. I'm dressing the way I am, a businessman. So the Rebbe gives him a smile and says, I knew you were faking it all along. I really knew you were faking it. But I thought you were faking it in Petersburg. I thought you were fooling them. And when you dress in Lubavitch, this is where you are for Rio. And you're telling me that here's the fake? The Nakuda is we have to know our Chitzonius counts a lot. And what we do with Chitzonius helps us. Like I brought several times from the Tzemach Tzedek, fake it till you make it. To be b'simcha. I would like to finish with one word about Hanukkah. I know it's already overtime, but I'll try to make it short. We all know there's Minig Yisrael to play a dreidel. It's brought in the Siches, Nun Gimel Heishin, Neis Gadol HaYisham, or in Eretz Yisrael with a pay. It's simple because Nun Gimel Heishin is Gematria 358, Mashiach. So what's in Eretz Yisrael? Nun Gimel Hey Pei adds up to 138, Gematria Menachem. In Eretz Yisrael, everything is more begolui. So they don't just say Mashiach. They say the name of Mashiach. In any case, that's not the word I want to say. When we spin a dreidel, we spin it and spin it. Does anyone see the ices that are on the dreidel while it's spinning? No. You can't see it. It's spinning too fast. Then the dreidel stops, and you see the letters Nun Gimel Hey Shin. Gematria Mashiach. What lesson does it teach us? Person's life sometimes is stable, and sometimes it's spinning like a dreidel. As dreitzach und dreitzach und dreitzach. And we don't know when it's going to stop the drainage and become stable again. But we should know, just like when the dreidel stops, what do we see on the dreidel? That the whole time, even while it was spinning, it had the same letters. Neis Gadol HaYasham, or Pi. It's the same letters, which means even while as Dreitzach Welt, and we don't know what's today and what's tomorrow, we should know it's only Oisayseino Leira'ino. We don't see the miracles, but we should know even during the Dreiden, during the spinning, and during the confusion, we should know the Eibster doesn't leave us alone. We should know that Neis Gadol HaYisham, miracles are happening. We just have to stop for a while and be mizbainen in the great miracles that are here present with us. This is basically what it says in Tanya, that even during a challenge, it's a gili oir elyon, that it's hard for it to be mislabish in a golidic way. But even then, you should know this is a neis gadol, not to despair, even during the drain, during the spinning. So how do we do it? Emunah and betachon, nothing else. Mil Hashem Elai. Batisyo and his sons went. Did they make cheshbonis? They saw such a gedreit. They have to fight these huge armies. But they knew who's in charge. But v'anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu na'azkir nidkol. We are with the Eibishter. And that's why we got up because Kivai Yismach Libeinu. What brings simcha into our hearts? Kivashem Koch Chovatachnu. That's all we have to do. Chanukah has to remind us of Ruchnius over Gashmius. And even if a person feels that Chas v'Shalom on himself, he has a part of him with Chalashim, the Eibishter gives you the Koyach to become strong. The Sati Geberim Biyat Chalashim. We could strengthen ourselves and overcome all these challenges. And then see how we can bring the Geula so fast, especially if we're Mesameach another Yid. If we say Happy Hanukkah to another Yid, put a smile on someone else's face, and say a good word, give a bracha. I've never yet come across someone that I'll say to him, have a great day, or the Eibusher should bench you, you say, get out of here. I never had that. I don't think anyone will have that. Usually, if you give a smile to someone, they'll give it back. And if chas v'shalom, that happens, you gave the smile, the person didn't give it back, maybe he couldn't give it back. His pockets are empty. He's going through so much, it's hard for him to answer back the good morning or give you back that smile. So he needs a smile even more than anyone. And we can do it. You know what they say? Why is it that the shamish of the menorah goes on top? Is the shamish part of the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah? It's not one of the native mitzvah. All the native mitzvah are on the bottom. Shamish is on the top. And we say, why? Because someone's there to help someone else deserves to be on the top. We deserve to be on the top, to get all the brachas from the Eibusher, because we help others to be v'simcha. The Eibusher is all helping that since we are now in Ner Hashvi, the Eibusher would show us that this Ner Hashvi is going to burst forth and bring us this Dar Hashvi that will be zeicha to see the kindling of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, Karev Mamash, through Mashiach Tzidkenu. Amen. Seid gesund, a freilichen Chanukah. Schön gesagt.